It's a very exciting day to be here because this is also the first official external communication of One Young World Switzerland. So hopefully you feel a little bit privileged to be in that audience. And thanks, Ali, for the invite as well. My name is Jessica Jones, and I'm the MD of One Young World Switzerland. And today I'm really excited to share with you a little bit about our vision for One Young World Switzerland, what we're working on, and exactly how we would love to involve and partner with you. We've heard a lot today already about the fact that our world faces many challenges. The future of our planet is uncertain. Young people are angry, they're anxious. Companies are being accused of greenwashing. Workers are leaving the workplace and are feeling disenfranchised, and inequality continues to grow. But at the same time, young people around the world are doing some brilliant things, convening their communities about important topics, creating new ideas, new startups, new companies, and challenging the status quo in the political sphere on topics that we've previously been afraid to talk about. Companies and leaders at the same time have the positive intention to transform what they're working on to be more sustainable in the future. So the positive intention is there, but that's exactly where the disconnect occurs. Young people have the passion, the drive, the motivation, the fresh perspective, and the new ideas, and sometimes, as Dan said, the loud voice to challenge the status quo. And existing organizations have the experience, the resource, and the power to make a change. But often, we're afraid to communicate between the two. And that's exactly where One Young World comes in. Ian mentioned earlier and put it very well, but One Young World is an incredible organization that works globally as a forum for young leaders. And Switzerland has been selected as the first national board to bring the impact that they are working on with their young leaders tangibly to the ground and accelerate it at a country level. Our vision at One Young World Switzerland is to identify, promote, and connect the most impactful young leaders across Switzerland in order to create those companies of tomorrow and transform the existing organizations of today. And we want to do this in 3 ways. Firstly, we want to convene young leaders at our annual One Young World Switzerland caucus in order to accelerate the impact that they are having and create the community between what they're working on. This year is taking place on the 29th and the 30th of June, so in a few weeks, trust me, I'm counting the days, and there's still time for you to join us if you're interested. And we, a bit like this event, are focusing not only on how can we transform organizations to be net zero, but how do we go one step forward, one step further, and become net positive, particularly in the streams that the WBCSD are working on, and Ian mentioned earlier, of climate, nature, and inequality. And this year, we're convening over 25 different Swiss organizations and their young leaders to not only discuss and broaden their ideas on these topics with inspiring speakers and mentors, but to tangibly take impact, take action, and work on what we can do to solve these challenges, particularly here in Switzerland. So, as I said, if you want to join us, then there's definitely still time for this. The second thing that we're doing is building a community of young leaders from across Switzerland, from different industries, companies, backgrounds, organizations, and interests, but with one common goal and passion behind that. This is a unique community that enables them to connect with peers and build a network outside of what they already have and what already exists so that they can tap into new skills and resources. And personally, through Generation B and Bula and through One Young World, I've experienced the power of having a network like this. And thirdly, the way that we want to achieve our vision is by bringing in the right partners. And that's exactly where we need you. Dan mentioned that One Young World globally has over 190 different partners, and we want to bring that even further and go even deeper inside Switzerland, particularly supporting startups, small and medium organizations that wouldn't have had access to these kind of inspiring topics and resources and networks across the country without it. We need your input. We need you to collaborate with our young leaders to provide them with support. And we also want you to engage with them and use them to support your goals and driving what you're doing. Ian mentioned the power that we have when we engaged young leaders at Bula in order to implement really tangible topics like CO2e quantification, and also transform our culture. Switzerland is in a unique position to drive an inspired generation. We have an outstanding dual education system, incredible academic institutions like the one that we're in here, brilliant and passionate startups like the people outside, and incredible charities that are doing brilliant work across the globe. We believe this is an incredible force for social good. Young leaders across Switzerland are calling out for resource and support to help them transform companies, not destroy them, to build inclusive organizations that capture the potential of the entire population, and to become socially responsible leaders so that we can transform and scale the work that we're doing here in Switzerland globally. And we believe One Young World Switzerland is the perfect forum to support that to happen, to identify, to connect, and to promote these young leaders, and to provide them with the community that supports them on their journey to get there. We want to establish Switzerland's young generation as the global example for social responsible leadership, and we want to do it with you. So if you're interested in what I've talked about, please come and join us at our global launch, or our launch event that's taking place on the 29th and the 30th of June in St. Gallen, not too far away from here. Send your young leaders, send the people that you know, send your friends and family to come and be a part of this incredible event. And if you can't join us physically, then you can also attend the first event, the first day online. And finally, please reach out to me. I would love to have a discussion about how we can develop this going forward, how we can engage and support you and make the most out of this brilliant opportunity and continue this journey together. Thanks.
Fantastic. So for those of you who are interested to know more, obviously you can scan those codes, but we'll also send you a link after this event because we'd love for you to be there. I want to be there. You want to grab a seat?
Totally.
You get to choose. We should get someone else who's young to join us. Vijay, do you want to come join us? Can we give it up for Vijay, please? Come on. Good to have you here.
Same, good to be here.
Excellent. So before we go for lunch, we're going to have a quick chat about youth, sustainability, big corporations, and all of that. I personally think that maybe we would not be on the whole sustainability track if it wasn't people like Greta Thunberg and others who are like, you know what, old people, you've done enough to screw the world. It's our turn now. Do you think that there is a complete generational mindset difference between youth, however you want to define that, and older people? Like, do you think for older people it's just like an agenda point, nice to have, a pillar? And for young people it's like, no, this is core to our existence. This is what we live, breathe, this is important. This is not just a nice talking point. Do you think there's a generational difference, or what is it? Or do you think we have a tipping point, so we have no other choice? Why do you think we need people who are young talking about sustainability?
I think there's always exceptions to the rule, right? But if we talk very generally about difference in generations, I mean, I've experienced it myself. As you spend longer in the corporate world or in the academic world, as you gain more experience in your career, your perspective on things changes. Mm-hmm. And I think the brilliant thing about the young generation at the moment, and Greta Thunberg and people that are really bringing this into the forefront of social media and new communication platforms that exist, is that there's a renewed sense of urgency. And a lot of the scientific data and information that's coming out is kind of putting that very clearly in facts. I mean, it's always existed, but it's now much more accessible. And I think that's what young people feel. And I mean, when you go through your teenage years, you have a lot more emotions, and generally as you grow up, you're experiencing new things, you become very focused on topics. And I think that's what's happening. And like I said, I feel it myself. As I spend longer in the corporate world, not that long, but your mindset changes and you start to sort of think more practically and about the different stakeholders involved. So to me, the values are the same. And I personally very strongly believe in the senior leadership of Bula and people supporting One Young World, that they have the right intention in mind. But I think just because of, having more life experience, potentially they feel less urgency on the topic, or they have different priorities.
Okay. Vijay, do you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I think one point I would like to add is also the role of education in this. Earlier, I think our education system was not built to uh, integrate sustainability into all practices and businesses. Now that has been changing slowly. I personally, from my experience, like studying at IMD, have experienced this that sustainability is not really a separate stream for every business, and it's not something that is a CSR activity. It's an integral course. It's an integral or core part of your business, and be it accounting, how to sustainably monitor, how to track your non-financial performances, etc. So even the education that we are receiving right now has changed our mindsets. And then there's a additional factor of social media. Your reach has increased. So that, I believe, is also another reason why there's a difference between the older generation and the younger generation.
Vijay, you're studying business right now
Yeah.
at IMD,
Yes.
and you have courses on sustainability?
Not separately.
Okay.
So I think it's very unique the way IMD has set it up. Before coming to IMD, I had experience of around 9 years working in consulting firm.
Uh-huh.
And for me, the expectation and outlook for an MBA was that it would be core technical subjects, accounting, finance, all the hard stuff. But after coming to IMD, I've realized how integral sustainability is within all of these subjects. So we don't have a specific subject for sustainability, but within accounting, how can corporates, how can companies monitor their non-financial performances? How can they track it? How can they bring it in terms of finance? Like how can they invest responsibly? In terms of marketing also, like what's sustainable marketing,
Yeah.
everything. So it's not really a separate stream or a sidetrack subject that we can take as an elective. It's, I think, core built into every subject.
I did my MBA a couple years ago, and I have to say, I don't think we ever even used the word sustainability at any point in that 1 year. So that's why I was curious if you had like a dedicated course to it, or if it was kind of a thread in all your subjects. But I think much to the embarrassment of my program, I don't think we talked about it at all. I got to talk to them about that. Talk to us a little bit about, I mean, you work at Bueller, and you've got experience with Nespresso and reverse board concept and others. Talk to us a little bit about what do youth bring to these entities and organizations that is not there without that voice? Because I am with you that this is an important voice and needs to be there, but what do you bring uniquely that is not there otherwise?
I think there's 2 points on that. I mean, firstly, it's sort of what I mentioned already in terms of the energy and the sense of urgency and the ability to be able to have a focus on different topics that perhaps the senior management aren't able to have a focus on at that point in time because they're worrying about many, many other things like keeping the company afloat and stuff like that. So it's being able to have this different focus. But at the same time, I think we also associate younger generation with being at the bottom levels hierarchically of the company. And therefore, I would say that when we talk about this and sort of bubbling strategy up, we're not only talking about young people, but we're talking about young-minded people, we always say at Bueller, and also, people who are just working generally in like entry positions. Yeah. And the power here is that when an executive board or senior management has a strategy that they really want to drive down, and the young people and the people at this level of the organization also believe and understand in what they've been doing because they have that dialogue. So they know them personally or, they have a bit of a relation with them. Then this really creates culture change in an organization. And this really helps you to embed topics like sustainability into the company that you're working for or the academic institution or whatever organization you're a part of. Because everybody in the organization is thinking about it. Everybody understands it, and the people in the middle management have it coming at them in 2 directions. And for me, I've experienced this at Bueller. That's something that's really special to experience because there's a lot of motivation and passion behind it, but it also, I think, is very effective. And when we talk about youth, I think we often talk about it in this kind of context.
Yeah, and connecting to what you said earlier, Jessica, the open-mindedness. So I love that you said there's a culture shift that youth can bring. And one of the things that you mentioned as a difference is the older you get, you call it being practical. I call it getting just more cynical. So you bring a new idea in, and they're going like, well, here are 10 reasons why it won't work. Whereas because maybe that experience is not there and because they haven't been shut down, young people are going to be like, why can't we do this? But I think that's important. I think that's healthy. And even if it feels like you're hitting a wall, I think it's important to soften that wall of older leadership to go, actually, why don't we dream about this or even try it or be willing to fail at it, but at least we give it a shot again. So I think that culture shift is essential. What would you say, Vijay?
Yeah, I think that shift is definitely essential. And for me, like for the youth of today, I don't think sustainability is only about the environmental aspect of it. It's much more, it's bringing in the social element. With the number of options we have in terms of our jobs and everything, there's a strong need for an engagement factor. We all need to be working in a place where we have work-life harmony, all those things. So that also kind of brings in sustainability angle, how corporates can, for example, make the office setting a better place to work for. I think Nespresso was one of the excellent examples wherein we were students from around, we were 40 students from University of Lausanne, EPFL, IMD, and we had more than 4 hours of airtime with the Nespresso C-suite across 6 weeks. We were allowed to throw in random ideas left to right, no obstacles, no limitations. And the best part was that the Nespresso CEO, Nespresso marketing officer, they were not only just appreciative of the idea or not just hearing those ideas, they were acknowledging them. They were trying to take it one step further, trying to see how it fits in their overall company strategy. If some idea was not aligned with their strategy, they were also okay challenging us. So that kind of face time with leadership, that is what drives a lot of youth of today. It's not just the salary component of it. It's also doing good for the society. It's being mindful. So I think that kind of makes a difference.
Absolutely. And that's good because it brings up, I guess, the question of how do we facilitate more youth in leadership is creating those channels, those bridges, those access points to senior leadership. A question that's also come in from an audience member and something I was thinking about as well is, besides great talk and great ambition and vision and desire, practically, can you give any examples of what young people have done in organizations that you are currently working in or have worked in, where you go, no, the credit there goes to young people. It wasn't just that they inspired senior leadership to take action, but no, this is a format, this is a style, this is a way of doing that is different. Do you have any examples of any practical pilots or programs?
Sure. I have a very recent example. Last week at IMD, we simulated a COP challenge partnered with UN. So the Conference of Parties on Climate Changes. The way it happens in the United Nations, all 196 countries participating, trying to meet the 2050 1.5 degree target. We went to United Nations and told them that we think we have a better way of doing it. And at IMD, we did a simulation. Everyone was given a role of either a country head or a forest minister or emissions minister.
Sure.
And the way our college participants were involved in it, the way we took it seriously with all facts, the way we negotiated, we had bilateral talks within different countries. So that, I believe, was IMD is the only school that has ever done that has ever simulated a COP challenge.
Right.
And those kind of examples where UN members were there listening to us and even taking notes, oh, this is something that you guys do and we don't have it in our agenda, maybe we should also do that. I think those things make a difference and inspire the corporate leaders and the executives.
It's a great example, Vijay.
Yeah.
Jessica, any thoughts?
I think it's always a challenging topic to talk about tangible impact when you talk about youth leadership, because it's often something when we talk about culture change that is very difficult to put a KPI to or something like that. And One Young World are really world leaders in tangibly communicating the impact that young leaders are having. And if you are interested in finding out more about that, then I really recommend you check out their impact report, which they release every year, which really quantifiably breaks down how many people they've impacted through the work that their young ambassadors do, how many tons of CO2e this has saved, how many people's lives this has benefited, and exactly how. So, I mean, they are really the experts in working on this. But when I reflect on my own experiences inside Bula, We're often asked this question. And Ian mentioned earlier a really good example of being able to spread and get buy-in of a strategically important topic like CO2e quantification and training ambassadors on that very quickly and in a way where people understand it as a message that they want to buy into and not just communication from the senior management. And that's a great example of how the fact that we had built an organization, a community of young leaders in Bula, we were able to use that very quickly to accelerate the message there. I mean, there are also lots of examples where individuals have taken on small projects, so things that they were passionate about at the time, like, for example, switching the material that we package our machines in before we ship them globally to something that's more sustainable. And this was the key point in understanding sustainability and emissions from our logistics in our operations. So starting and sparking topics there before management even had them really on their radar. At Bula as well, the topic of diversity and inclusion was something that was incredibly important to our CHRO and many of our colleagues, of course. But creating an event around it, at the time, empowering women and hearing from female leaders, was also a key sparking point in creating the atmosphere in our company where we said, okay, well, we need to take this seriously. And small examples like, for example, our office at our factory in London, planting trees and planting flowers and rewilding the area that they have on their site led to a really important collaboration between a research institution on biodiversity and is helping to now drive our efforts on biodiversity and sustainably. So moving away from just talking about emissions, but also looking at nature and biodiversity. So often when you look at the individual actions that young leaders are having, they don't seem massive. But when you look at the impact that they have cumulatively and in bringing topics that wouldn't have been addressed without them, then you see that the impact is really real. And I work in manufacturing, so believe me, I love a KPI, but it's really difficult to put one on things like that.
So we started off today asking the advice that probably the oldest speaker on the stage would have. And now that we have maybe some of the youngest speakers on the stage, I'm going to end this morning session with asking you, what is your 30 seconds of advice to our audience and those who are watching?
Maybe I go first then. I really love the word organic when it comes to youth leadership. And so my advice would always be to go where the energy is. Sometimes the timing isn't quite right for a topic. Sometimes the network isn't quite right for the topic. Sometimes you're not listening to me in that moment, but sometimes you need to wait for the right moment. So for me, always think about organic growth. It's sustainable. And look for these opportunities to partner with other people, but at the right time. And when it fits for them on the right topic.
Good advice. Vijay?
For me, I think it's threefold. One, be educated. If you're a youth in a corporate, know what your company is doing, know where you're doing good, where you're not doing good. Be vocal, second. If you feel something is not aligned with your strategy, with your guts, feel free to speak up. You have the power to do that, so feel empowered to speak. And third, don't be a fence sitter. I think you need to go take actions, not just speak up, but it's your responsibility to make this world a better place for next generation. So you have to go and take those actions yourself.